We can't hear you, Michael.
Yeah, I haven't said anything yet. There we go. Okay. Hi, everybody, and welcome to our glamour work. We're really in the veil of illusion at the moment. That's what we're going to be considering. We're in a new section, how group intuition dispels world illusion, and we are deeply with millions of people just in the first stage of that combination of glamour and illusion. I'm very happy to see you here. You know, there's quite a few, so I'm not going to go down the entire list here. Happy to have BL and Michael Crow assisting me, because I know what it's like, you know, to be all thumbs when I'm by myself. You know, maybe things will go smoother than when I'm on myself. So anyway, you know, it's a question of the quality of thought, and the fact that there's so many people that just don't think, and they react emotionally, and that, of course, veils the possibility of really aligning with the plan, because it all ends up being so personal. Okay, hi, Carl. See you there. Okay, it all ends up being so personal. And when you're just so personally focused and have your eyes upon the lower self, I can't hear anything.
Yeah, I'm wondering if I think
Michael, we lost you.
I think his computer just froze.
What the hell time is it?
So we'll just have to wait for him to come back.
Okay, everybody, sorry, we just lost Michael. Let's give him a minute to come back.
Okay.
Intermittently, suddenly I just disappeared. I wish it were that easy, you know, going from one plane to another. But and I kind of forget where I was when that was happening. But basically, I was saying, look, we're so subject in the world to the inability to think, and we're victims of kama-manasic thinking, especially millions of people. And when you have kama-manasic thinking, you do have glamour and illusion both together. The worst of both worlds. We'll be meditating in terms of glamour on our usual violent emotional reactions, which are fairly thoughtless and which are veiling so much of what the truth of the plan really is. Before getting into it more fully, I think, let's see, I just want to say what we're going to have coming up tomorrow, the new moon meditation, which is going to begin at 9:30 a.m. GMT. And I assume that that's going to be on Zoom. Assume Zoom. I think so.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, that's good. Thank you. And you know, the new moon itself is right around 10:20, so we'll have a little time to go forward with it. Then I want to tell you that Walter Pullen and I are working on a book. Well, it's coming right off the internet from the old days when Rick Good was managing the Terra test. And it's going to be a book of about 165 or 170 pages, and it's going to be a book of process. In other words, it's a meditative book that's going to allow you to go through maybe a month-long process as you begin searching for your higher rays. Now, that doesn't mean we have perfected the expression of our lower rays, not by any means, but at least it will give us a fighting chance to think about what the higher rays may mean to us. And meanwhile, we also have another project going where you will be able, we hope, to go to a website and take the Tara test and see the bar graphs and all the rest, which may help you get a fuller idea of the synthesis of your ray structure. Now, when it comes to our coming conference, our theme in the Advancing Seven Ray Seminar is all about the synthesis of the ray structure. So anything goes, and we'll be looking at the different parts of your energy system. So, do make every effort, please, to be with us for at least some of the work we're doing in the pre-conference. And let's see, New Moon meeting link is there. Okay, thank you very much, Michael Crow. All right, excellent. So I think those are the, and now just to say again, David Hopper, who has been doing this work with Journey of the Soul, and I think this is his 8th and last presentation in that series, and we have sent out, Anne and Tuya have sent out a corrected schedule, which basically gives you David tomorrow, Saturday, and we've moved the EUN, Esoteric United Nations meeting, to Sunday, okay? So that will probably be at, oh gosh, I'm not exactly sure. Is it 6 p.m.?
7:30 p.m.
Is it 7:30 p.m.? Okay, on Sunday, right? On Sunday, at least here in Europe,
Yes,
yeah.
Sunday.
Yes, yes, GMT.
GMT, very good. Okay, well, that gives, I just want you to have those things in mind, and I think Anne has sent out to everybody the revised schedule. Okay, so good. That's as far as we go right now, and then we get into illusion. Get in up to our neck in illusion here. Hopefully our head stays out of it a little bit. All right, now I want to make sure that I have this correct. Okay, so now we're into our reading, friends, and there are 44 of us roughly here, so I just welcome you all in general. Okay, and I'm very happy that you are plowing through with Tuya and me and with the whole communications group behind the effort. You can understand well that what we're aiming for in all of these programs might be considered the quality of synthetic understanding. I think it's something that Master DK has in tremendous emphasis in his approach. Today I was looking up the number 7 in Letters on Occult Meditation because I became convinced that, quite apart from how I used to think of it, my thought has evolved, that there are 7 subsidiary ashrams in the great Chohanic ashram of any Chohan, like Master KH, and not 6 subsidiary. And I got this out of the law of analogy by considering the number 7 in relation to color and in relation to the octave and sound. So what it really means is there's 7 great Chohanic ashrams, and each one of them has 7 subsidiaries. And the Chohanic ashram is tremendously inclusive of all 7 qualities, including, let's look at Master KH. His is the indigo Chohanic ashram, but there is a subsidiary ashram whose colors are indigo, indigo. You know, indigo red, indigo, indigo, indigo green, indigo yellow, indigo orange, indigo blue, pink, you know, rose, and indigo violet. So I've had to revise some of my thinking, and that will be showing up in the new PIP book or the new PIP workbook, however you want to look at it. And I just want to say, as long as it's on my mind, that every one of us is a member one day of a Chohanic major ashram. For most of us, it's the second ray, but it doesn't have to be. It, you know, it might be another ray, but the great majority of us come in under Master DK and the second ray. And as time goes on, we will want to know our specific work within a subsidiary ashram. I used to think that Master DK ran the 2 sub 3 ashram. Now I'm not so sure anymore. I think it might be the 2 sub 2 subsidiary ashram with a lot of input from his third ray monadic energy, a sub energy of his major second ray up on the logoic plane. But all of that is stuff that, you know, you can learn about as we think carefully together about these matters. You may say, well, why do I have to know all this? Well, I would just say, make sure you have, excuse me, make sure you have a well-stocked mind in order. The Society of Organized and Illumined Minds. That's what the hierarchy is called. So, you know, let's emulate them and let's learn everything we can, especially in these waning days, or shall I maybe call them intensifying days of the era of the Forerunner, lasting until the year 2025. Now, sorry for the deviation here, but as long as these things were on my mind and freshly on my mind, I wanted to be able to communicate them to you, you know, while they were fresh, let us say, you know, because otherwise important things can fade away. And for some reason, I'm not seeing Tuya, so that means that she's having internet issues too. If you would be so kind, either Michael or BL, and send her the full link, and maybe she can get on with us. Okay, now let's get into the reading, and we're working with illusion, okay, which he considers to be a form of glamour, just the way, you know, the Hindus consider glamour to be a form of illusion. And then the Vedantists consider it all to be Maya, not just the Maya of the etheric physical plane. So basically, words like illusion, glamour, Maya, they can be generalized words that cover all the specific 3. And what I'm going to ask you to do, for the sake of our conversation a little later, is take notes as you go, or at least make a note, if you wish, about something you might like to discuss. So then when it comes time to open the floor and you can write or talk, then you will have a memory prompt of where you want to go. So whether you do it on a computer or with a pen or whatever, just make a note of things you might like to reference or discuss as we go. Okay. Group intuition dispels world illusion. We remember that the word dispel is particularly connected with illusion, dissipate, particularly connected with glamour, and disperse, particularly connected with the Maya of the etheric physical plane. You know, as I've said, DK gives us these mnemonics. All these words are D, all these words are I, all these words are S, whatever, so that we can remember what he's talking about and they come in more easily. Okay, so this is written, 80 years ago or more. Today, the world is full of illusions, many of them veiled under the form of idealisms. And so people cling, very tightly to them because they are considered their ideals. That's the problem. It is full of wishful thinking. Immediately look for the planet Neptune when you are thinking of the lower part of Neptune and involving it with that kind of unrealistic hopefulness, which does not take practicalities into consideration. It is full of wishful thinking, and right there, doesn't that tell you? This is kama-manasic. Wishful thinking is an aspect of kama-manasic. It's full of wishful thinking and planning, and even though much of this is rightly oriented and expresses the fixed determination of the intelligentsia to create better living conditions for the entire population of the world, the question arises, is there in the sum total of this wishful thinking enough of the essential dynamic livingness which will carry it down into physical demonstration? Because the plan must manifest, of course, on the lowest plane, highest and the lowest meet. Enough dynamic livingness which will carry it down into physical demonstration and factual expression, and thus truly meet a human need, and we might say, right here and now. So I'm going to highlight this particular question because we have to challenge ourselves with it. Is there really enough of this livingness to touch the lower planes? Otherwise, we become totally impractical idealists living mystically within Neptune's almost aversion to touching down. Neptune is almost like in one way, the rootless planet. And it has characterized an awful lot of the mysticism of the last 1,000 years and maybe earlier. He says there's a special group of mystics that are connected with Neptune, and they have been powerful, or at least emergent, during the last 1,000 years or so. Well, the physical plane has become a mess, but they have been satisfied in their aspiration, and probably some of us have experience of being that way and have to correct it. I'm pretty sure I have to, go back and correct some of those things in my own series of lives. So Neptune is a great planet, leading us to the Buddhic plane, and to the monadic plane, and to the cosmic astral plane. So it has a tremendous elevation in it. But can the ideals touch down? This is the question, and really anchor themselves. And for that, of course, astrologically, we need Saturn, we need Uranus to make, and Vulcan, to make the anchorage of Neptune's wonderful ideals occur on the dense physical plane. So you can see how Neptune will contribute to the kama-manasic illusion, unless it is we guard against the abuses of this particular planet, which rules, we're told, the higher point in the solar plexus center, with Mars ruling the lower. Well, Mars can make a big demonstration on the outer plane, but it's not the demonstration we necessarily want because it's so separative, and we've seen a lot of that in the last 4 or 5 years. I would point out, says the Tibetan, that the two greatest revealing agents, notice how he refers to them, who, with a capital, have ever come to Earth within the range of modern history, and what is that range, made the following simple revelations to humanity. And I guess who are we going to talk about here? And it's my guess that that's who he means. Okay. Number one, this looks very Buddhist. The cause of all human suffering is desire, which is a form of lower attachment, at least desire on the microcosmic level. There is a wider type of desire, which is a cosmic principle, and it'll never go away. It puts the universe back together, so to speak. The cause of all human suffering is desire and personal selfishness. Well, these abound at the moment. Give up desire and you will be free. And this, of course, this is pretty much the Buddha, though, of course, everything the Christ said adds to it through an intensified love nature. They both have the great wisdom. They both have love. Some of the stories about the Buddha are filled with immense loving sacrifice, but still the Buddha, the Lord of wisdom and the Lord of light, and the Christ, the Lord of love, or love wisdom. Number two, there is a way of liberation, and it leads to illumination. The greatest illumination in modern times is the Buddha touching the cosmic mental plane at the 6th initiation. I mean, qualitatively, it's different from the Christ's rapport with the cosmic astral plane. But just imagine how high the Buddha, overshadowing Gautama, bear that in mind, had to go meditatively in his illumination to touch the cosmic mental plane, a cosmic touch. And for the rest of us, let's just say illumination really would come increasingly until we have a glorification at the 3rd initiation, and it only gets brighter from that point on. There is a way of liberation and it leads to illumination. So we are all seekers after the light, and our planetary logos will eventually come forth with a great light demonstration. At some point, I suppose, farther on into the existence of our solar system, whether that existence is objective or later subjective. Number 3, this is the Christ. It profits a man nothing to gain the whole world and lose his soul. You know, we've been to church a lot. I didn't begin in church, but I did so much music that I conducted choirs and sang in choirs in just about every church that could be found in my college and later days. So I know the substance of the sermons. I sometimes joke that I went through the whole age of Pisces from the age of Aries in 10 years, just through church choirs and conducting church choirs. Anyway, it's the Christ saying, what should it profit a man if he gain the whole world and lose his soul? So just think about it for just a second. The unnecessary things that we still may want, to gain for the little personal self, because we're not immune, you know, and it gets more and more subtle as we go, more and more subtle. And we have to make those discriminations concerning the unnecessary. And I wonder how good we are at doing that. Okay, and every human being is a son of God, or S-U-N, or a son or daughter, but you know, it means a radiant orb of God. That's the Christ again. A radiant orb of the great sacrifice, Sanat Kumara, and of his ultimate status as the planetary logos. I mean, when you withdraw, I mean, Sanat Kumara is an emanation of the planetary logos. He is the planetary logos in emanation. And when he is reabsorbed, it is into the fullness of the nature of the planetary logos. You know, maybe at the 7th initiation, that planetary logos is presiding, and maybe not Sanat Kumara, as it tells us in initiation, human and solar. So, and the 5th point, that this way of liberation, not only leading to illumination, it is the way of love and sacrifice on our planet with its second ray soul. Well, this is a hard one. The way of love and sacrifice, the very first law of the soul. You know, we're going over these laws with our study of group work. And we have to be able to say one day, as the Christ can say, I am the love of the world. A number of them, Hermes, Buddha, Christ, have said, I am the light of the world, and there's a new step required. But remember, when you say it, you can't look at yourself as a form. You have to look at yourself as an energy. Then you can say, maybe at some point, I am the love of the world. So he's pointing out the 2 greatest revealing agents who have come to Earth in modern times. Now look, there were, and the great revealing agents. And the book, The reappearance of the Christ is so good because it tells us about who and when, who some of these revealing agents were, and when they, Hercules was one of them, actually, with his dramas, and gosh, is it Vyasa is maybe another one, and I mean, there are a number of names there from ancient times, and what they gave to humanity through their revelations. One of them gave the revelation of immortality after the veil had slipped down over the human consciousness due to the intervention of the Lodge of Darkness. So, he restored whoever this one was, I can't remember exactly, but he restored the hope and the teaching of immortality. So simple revelations, they came, every one of them simple, and every one of them really difficult to actually fully achieve. So test yourself, measure yourself against these revelations, because it will mean that, if you can exhibit them, you are slipping out of the clutches of glamour and illusion. Now, even if we are a second-degree initiate, there are still glamours to deal with. And even if we are a third-degree initiate, the illusion of the kind of finality of the egoic lotus or causal body still hovers over us. And the Christ asked us to give it up and give everything to the poor. And who are the poor? Those who have not yet the knowledge or wisdom or love that we have managed to accumulate, and follow him. Something's very hard, apparently, as that initiate called the rich young man went sadly away at that time. Since that time, he has, he has made the grade, but he went sadly away because he couldn't fulfill the demands of the Christ. Sell it all, give it away to the poor, and follow me. And, ask yourself the question, because with most of us, there is something that holds us back from giving all. To those who give all is given. It's in Letters on Occult Meditation. It's a law. It's what makes a master or a Chohan or a higher Chohan or a greater being. And maybe that's why Dane Rudhyar wrote that book called, at that time, The Gifts of the Spirit. And the word for giving tells us something about the attitude of one who exists for the privilege of giving whatever he or she has accumulated. I remember, I don't know, Charles Jane, wonderful astrologer. He kind of tried to get into the Lucis Trust in the year that he was to die, on the very last day of it. And this was the beginning of the year. And somehow I caught him in the hallway and I said, look, I'm willing to be your student. And, just let me know when I can visit you. So I visited him every Sunday. And I learned a lot, but at one point I was asking him some questions about his major theories in astrology, which have been taken up by astrologers better suited than I to develop it, like Nicholas Nilan. He's done a tremendous work in developing these things, and another as well, others. And he had kind of a shiver went over him. And I said, well, what's wrong, Charles? And he said, well, I just had the impression that I'm emptying the bowl. Well, at the time, I thought it was okay, just an impression. But sure enough, by the time the end of the year had come, exactly on December 31st of that year, 1985, he had passed on. And during his time with me, I caught enough to give to a lot of people the major progressive theses that he was advancing. Very complicated and very interesting, but I'm glad I was there to catch it. And he was emptying the bowl. Now, that's something we all have to consider. We all have a chalice. We have accumulated much in our life of study and meditation and service. So, comes the time, you just have to make sure that other people have it too, and that you give them as much as you possibly can before it's too late. If it is too late, then time is lost. And I could tell you some stories about that one too, when I personally have not been sufficiently vigilant to realize that an important theorist and practitioner was passing, and he passed with his bowl, not emptied. So let's not get caught in that particular situation. Keep the flow steady as you are giving out to people, and then it won't be a huge emergency and crisis in the end. The lives of these revealers were symbolic representations of that which they taught. They lived it, right? And the rest of their teaching is but an extension of their central themes. So we can say they lived what they taught. And that itself seems so easy to do, but we know it's not. And that's why out of the 4 requirements in a treatise on white magic, set an example is the 4th, and maybe the most important and the hardest to live up to. Their contribution was an integral part of the general revelation of the ages, which has led men from the primitive state of human existence to the complex state of modern civilization. And just think, individualization 21 million years ago, coming to yourself in terms of understanding your distinct individuality 18.5 million years ago. So what an amazing progress it has been to think of the the Lemurian type at first in these huge tabernacles of clay, immense bodies, makes the Atlanteans look like midgets, and 60 feet tall, whatever, the Bahamian Buddhas, which were destroyed, by one of those groups that can't stand history, were representations of the stature of these huge man beings in the early days. But anyway, very primitive, and really having to do the physical thing first and just think where we are now in terms of our technicalities, our technical know-how, our modern civilization with all of its advancement along 7 ashramic lines. The general revelation can be called the revelation of the path, which leads out of form to the center of all life. The purity of this revelation has been preserved down the ages by a small handful of disciples, initiates, and true esotericists. That is, when he uses that word esoteric, watch out, because oftentimes, believe it or not, the monad is implicated in that word. And true esotericists who have always been present upon earth, defending the simplicity, Shambhala, right? Defending the simplicity as known in Shambhala of that teaching, and seeking for those who could respond to and recognize the germ or seed of truth, and training men to take their place eventually, and to tread the way of intuitive perception. Oh, it's, the farther we go, the less we know, but the more we realize has been given to us to assimilate. Today I was looking over letters on occult meditation, and I was just, maybe I said it before, I was just flabbergasted at what DK has managed to give us, unappreciated, I might say, in its fullness. I mean, we appreciate Master DK, but the incredible completeness, and for him it wouldn't be complete, but for us it is, the incredible completeness of what he has given, and all these details, and mapping out the future for us. I discovered it when I was just looking at the number 7, seventh, sevenfold, whatever. It just overwhelmed me what the magnitude of his gift to us, and really, of course, to humanity, has been. So we call it here the revelation of the path, the general revelation. And what is the center of all life? Well, it is life itself. It is the monad. It is pure being, we might say. And somehow there have been a few in whose minds all of this has not yet fallen into illusion of emotional taint and concrete mindedness. A few have preserved the revelation intact. They've always been present on earth, and when you see the word simplicity, look out for Shambhala, because DK tells us, page 518 of Dyna 2, that simplicity governs the way into Shambhala. So can you be tremendously detailed in your understanding and simple at the same time? I think Master DK shows us the way on this. So defending the simplicity of that teaching and seeking for those, may they be among us as well, who could respond to and recognize the germ or seed of truth, and training men to take their place and to tread the way of intuitive perception. And we're just on the borderland of that. We have to remember that it is the 6th root race, which is the race of intuition. Right now, we are the 6th sub-race of the 5th root race, and we are the race that has to bring into visibility and practicality the abstract mind, the lowest part of the spiritual triad, which is not yet the intuition. But that's our job for the next 2,000 years, to bring forward the way of intuitive perception, which is going to be so important right here in the dispelling of illusion. But even the abstract mind can help a great deal. One of the major tasks of the hierarchy is to seek for and find those who are sensitive to revelation. Won't be a personal thing. It's not about personhood. It's about the larger picture and about the welfare of the group and of the whole. To seek for and find those who are sensitive to revelation and whose minds are so trained so they can formulate the emerging truths in such a way that they reach the ears of the world thinkers relatively unchanged. You know, it's always the distortion that's going on as you take the little human mind and a great truth, and before you know it, the great truth has been shrunken into a form which, though similar, is not anywhere complete. It's not full of the value that the great truth had. All revelation, however, when put into words and word forms, loses something of its divine clarity. And DK is always, you know, in a kind of a good way, complaining about the inelastic tongue, which he calls English to be, and how very frustrating it is for him to try to put the higher truths into that inelastic tongue. But let us at least develop the antikarana and the abstract mind so that when some flash of intuition about the larger picture may come to us with all of its impressive truth, we can at least do a reasonable job in representing it before the members of the intelligentsia, who perhaps can pick it up and take it deeper into the substance of humanity. The intelligentsia has definite limitations. You know, because they're considered to be the acme of civilization, because people like ourselves and, you know, in general, aspirants, disciples, and initiates are considered to be fanciful people, unrealistic people, and they are not given the credit that the intelligentsia has. But we know better about that. There are definite limitations when you put together the third and the fifth ray, which govern so much of the intelligentsia. It just does not get into what we call reality and what they call illusion and fantasy. So somehow our job, well, you know, I'm always saying our job. We have a lot of jobs, but we have to come forward with the possibility of being intelligent enough and at the same time preserving our intuitive realization, intelligent enough to convince the intelligentsia that what we are dealing with is worthy of their attention. And then they can help think the process into the substance of normally kama-manasic humanity, especially those who stand on the verge of being able to make a bridge into something more real. Much of the revelation of the past, says DK, has come along the lines of the religious impulse. And as the illusion has deepened and grown in time, the original simplicity, as it was conveyed by its revealers, the Christ and the Buddha, we're told, would hardly recognize what's become of their simple statements in all the dogmatism that now surrounds it. Much of that original simplicity has been lost. Now, this is really an important paragraph. All basic revelations are presented in the simplest forms. Accretion after accretion, accumulation has crept in. The minds of men made the teaching complex through their mental dissertations until the great theological systems were built up, which we call, for instance, the Christian church and the Buddhist system. Now, you may recall that DK, he didn't really let Buddhism off the hook here. He said that Buddhism would become, in the ensuing years, more and more dogmatic. And certainly Christianity has become more and more dogmatic. So there has been a deviation from simplicity. Now, of course, in some ways, the garment of God on all of its different levels is, when handling it, not an easy matter. There's a lot of parts and pieces there that we have to be cognizant of. But the great underlying simplicity, which synthesizes everything, that has been lost to a lot of people, or it's been so reduced that it has become almost ludicrous. Just believe emotionally and you will be saved forever in heaven. Well, people like ourselves could take that statement apart and get technical about it and say, what does it mean to be saved? What does it mean forever? Where is your salvation occurring? There are all kinds of questions that an occultist will ask that have never entered the minds of the people who dogmatically hang on to a few simple things. But look, we've been there too. There have been times when I know we have been just like the people that are up and coming and need apparently some kind of really simple formulation, which is full of illusion and full of glamour, in order to make them feel secure. Now, our task is to help them feel their way out of that prison and think, however haltingly at first, and think their way out of the prison. This does not mean that these people are not intelligent. In a concrete way, and in the hall of ignorance, they can be very intelligent. But in terms of building up a recognition of the higher of the pairs of opposites, they haven't even begun. So in a way, they haven't really much entered the hall of learning at all, which is really learning about the pairs of opposites and eventually siding with the higher of the pairs of opposites. So anyway, regarding the Christian church and the Buddhist system, their founders of those systems, or what became those systems, would have much difficulty in recognizing the 2 or 3 fundamental and divine facts or truths which they sought to emphasize, to reveal and emphasize. So great is the mantle, like a heavy cloak. So great is the mantle of illusion, which has been thrown over the simple pronouncements of the Christ and of the Buddha. Yeah. So it's a serious situation, but science will also come to our aid in this and will help blast away many of the dogmas which are gospel, which are gospel to the people who embrace them. And, you know, it's hard to give up egotism or even egoism. It's hard to give up misidentification, identification with what we are not, and failure to identify with what we really are. It's hard to give it up just because of the way the human mind is at present constructed. The vast cathedrals and the pompous ceremonies of the Orthodox are far removed from the humble way of the life of the Christ, the master of the masters and the teacher alike of angels and of men, and from the simplicity of his present way of life, as he watches and waits for the return of his people to the simple way of spiritual realization. And you know, when you look at what's happening now with Pluto and Vulcan and the pandemic and the economic uncertainty for so many people, you can see that something of the return is beginning to occur. I think we're going to be driven into a humbler way where so many will learn how very little it takes to live the spiritual life. Very little of the material values are necessary to live the spiritual life. I mean, you know, the Son of God hath not where to lay his head. Now that's an extreme maybe. And, you know, Jesus was born in a manger. I mean, when you look at, who is it? Yeah, Ramakrishna. His room was a bed and a little chest of drawers. That's it. That's it. What did he need? You know, when you're so rich in the spirit, what do you need in terms of the encumbrance of many, many things? And, you know, like Ralph Waldo Emerson said, and it's unfortunately so true, things are in the saddle and ride mankind. Things are in the saddle and ride mankind. Well, I think that's going to be as far as I'm going to go today with the preparatory reading. And I don't even know what page we're on here. Page 186. And let's just say I'm going to bring this down and try to get my numbers straight. Where am I starting from here? From 184. So from 184 to 186. Now, I tell you, that's really progress. I think we'll have to get past the year 2100 to finish these things. Excuse me, I'll be right back. Okay, so this is going to be reading 113, that's the end, and 184 to 186, and it's been evening program. Yeah, I said that already. And then we're beginning a program 177. So this one was program 176. And when do we have our next one? Does anybody know? Reading 114. Oh boy, glamour, glamour, glamour.
Michael,
Yeah.
I believe we have our next one at 6 a.m. on the 19th of March. If I'm reading the calendar correctly.
Yeah, you are reading. Yeah, yeah. Good. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Disorientation, Neptune in the third house. Okay, so 6 a.m. GMT, 19th, did you say, of March, did you say? 21. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, very good. So that will be our next. We try to do keep going with these glamour exercises, and generally reading through this wonderful book, which relates to C group number 2 and the basic clarification of consciousness. And it's oftentimes where we think we're strong that we are unclarified, and that has to be realized. Not a pleasant realization, but so true, really. And gradually we'll make our way out of the problem and help our groups and humanity in general to do the same. So that's coming up, actually, coming up quite soon and quite near to our spring. Well, I shouldn't call it spring, our Aries equinox. It's fall in the south, but okay. Aries prevails over the entire planet. So we'll be dealing with that, of course, according to the schedule. Now, maybe if you've made some notes or have some thoughts, this would be the time when we could take up a little bit of that before our meditation. I'm just trying to see.
The only one I see right now is Yvonne wants to know what's happening with Pluto and Vulcan.
Well, before the first initiation can take place, Pluto and Vulcan have to get to work. And have they ever been at work? I'll show you the reference. Of course, Pluto right now is in the sign of Hercules' journey into the lower worlds, into the hell worlds, into Hades, whatever you want to call it, into the realm of Pluto. Pluto is journeying in Capricorn. Now, if we turn to page, just take me a second, and hopefully it will be somewhat clear. I'll go to the book Esoteric Astrology, and I will go to page 71. And here we go. And it's outlined in red, as you will see in a minute, because we're dealing with 2 first-ray planets, even though their monadic ray is probably not the first ray. Pluto non-sacred would at least have a first-ray personality, and Vulcan sacred would at least have a first-ray soul. But listen to this. At the various initiations, the influence of the planets affects the candidate in a totally different manner, than earlier. Totally different than earlier. So I guess we have to, look at Vulcan as making weapons, and Pluto is causing death and sometimes mass death. And, it's psychological complexes and all kinds of things that come from not dealing with the dregs of what's found at the bottom of your aura. And by the way, if you want to turn on your video, you can do that if you want. Okay, now listen to this one, Yvonne. At the first initiation, the disciple has to contend with the crystallizing and destroying forces, respectively, of Vulcan, crystallizing, Pluto, destroying, with the crystallizing and destroying forces of Vulcan and Pluto. Vulcan puts on the pressure. This is the will of the soul. Are you willing to stand in spiritual being? Can you stand the light that Vulcan, so close to the sun, can deliver, polishing up the personality until it radiates? The old saying, Vulcan burnishes, the shield of Mars. Mars is the personality. The influence of Vulcan reaches to the very depths of his nature. This is the spiritual will penetrating right down there and imposing its way upon the normal personality methods and crushing. When you talk about crush, that is Vulcan, and crushing out so many of the crystallized dogmatic positions of the concrete mind and emotional reactions. And it's also very much involved with the etheric body. So the word crush, not a pleasant word, but that's where Vulcan is involved. The influence of Vulcan reaches to the very depths of his nature, whilst Pluto, and you can see it's happening now, when you say what's happening, okay? Whilst Pluto drags to the surface and destroys all that hinders in the lower regions. And you can imagine that with this COVID-19 and, with the kind of violence that's being shown by many ignorant people, Pluto is revealing it for what it is and holding it up into the light of day. And all kinds of abuses are coming to the surface. It's part of the, conspiracy theory thing, because a lot of people are seizing upon the energy of Pluto and say, something is going on behind the scenes. I wonder what it is. And they fall into the glamour producing energy or force of suspicion. Suspicion, self-pity, and criticism. Suspicion, self-pity, and criticism. These are three root causes of glamour, and suspicions coming in on the first ray, which which Pluto tends to offer us as it scours the bottom of the aura and let me use the word heals through exposure. If we don't know it's there, we can't do anything about it. And now we're shocked, oh my God, that's there. All of the terrible things, and some people take it so far that they wander off into illusion and they say, oh, this is Satan, and they're eating children, and it's just, it gets crazy. But there are a lot of abuses which are presently coming to the surface. And so when you ask the question, what are Pluto and Vulcan doing? Vulcan is imposing the will, crushing out the crystallizations which stop real progress, and Pluto is exposing to the light of day so many things long hidden, but just as much in the accuser as the one accused. That's what DK tells us, that if we are really noticing something and it really bothers us, watch out, because somewhere in your own nature is the seed of that very thing. Maybe not as bad, maybe you lived through it already, but you have a sensitivity to it because it has been part of your lower nature. So that's my answer, Yvonne, to what are Vulcan and Pluto doing. And when they've done their work, the Christ can return or reappear, and it will signal that the first initiation for which Vulcan and Pluto prepare will have been taken by those members of humanity who can take it, and that will lift the whole of humanity. Not everybody will take it, of course, but enough so that humanity can be said to have taken the first initiation. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Now let's see, what else? Anybody
Yeah,
want to?
but we
Yep.
have a number of other comments. Jessica says, in this state of modern civilization, how much progress have we made really? For example, corporate bodies seem to determine what ends up in our physical bodies, such as GMOs and synthetic agents. These bodies seem to be lost in greed, chasing profits, even while knowing their actions are destroying Earth. How do we determine what is illusion and what is real in our current environment, knowing that the motivation of controlling powers are profit-driven? I would argue this is understandably the root cause of mistrust, fear, anxiety, and paranoia of present times. I am curious.
How others navigate this dilemma is what you're going to say there. Yeah, well, okay, you raised some good points. Now look, remember that the future is predicted in the following way by Master Moria, that people and groups, and I assume reoriented corporations, will be vying with each other to do good. Now, it may not look like it at the moment because we're under the pall of materialism, and if you want to trace it back to where it comes from, the third star of the Big Dipper, Alioth, is out of alignment with the second and the fourth star. Merak and not Merak, but is it Megrez? Anyway, there's two stars there, the second one and the fourth one. It's out of alignment. It's too low visually, which is symbolically the problem. Materialism, which is a superficial assessment, a delusion that the testimony of the senses is reality, is in the driver's seat when it comes to these people who are very skillful, very intelligent, but basically blind. They are basically blind to real values, and they take some kind of symbolic thing like money. It's purely a symbol, it stands for a kind of energy, but it's a symbol, and they're willing to give up everything for the symbol, which and talk about false values. But you see, that is also going to be destroyed. That particular approach, corporate greed. DK warned us, he said, watch out for the selfish groups. You think selfish individuals or people are bad, but watch out for the selfish groups. And surely we have them now. but gradually the will of the people, and just the will to meet their needs will destroy that particular motivation of the corporate groups. We just have to have the faith and keep working in that direction. They're doing a lot of bad things right now, sacrificing the earth, chasing the insubstantial, or should we say all too substantial, chasing after that while their home is being destroyed. They are the ray of abstract intelligence, remember, but they also are the ray, eventually, of creative intelligence. And there will be a reorientation into saving corporations. We just have to live through this period of transition. This is my impression about it. And it can't be expected to go on forever. I don't think it will. Otherwise, we won't have any kind of entrance into the Aquarian age. And I do believe already with Pluto and Capricorn and Pluto coming into Aquarius, that these two signs, Capricorn and Aquarius, which have so much to do with corporate life, will be really transformed and the bad parts of it destroyed. There may be revolution of a kind in order to destroy it, not the kind of revolution that the ignorant millions at the moment are hoping for, the overthrowing of legitimate democratic government. No, a different kind of revolution. And I believe it's already beginning, because the people will take only so much. So I am hopeful, but also persistent in thinking we have to stay with the process and not be deluded by the horrible outer appearance and think about what is coming. DK always tells us that. Don't get taken in by what is happening immediately on the surface. It is leading to something better. So, you know, we fight it esoterically as best we can. And the hierarchy is now going to be emerging in the 5 planetary centers as a harbinger of the coming of the Christ in maybe another 100 years. You know, maybe, depends on what humanity does. And the emergence of these masters will put such a pressure on the corporate selfishness that it will begin to crumble under the weight of Pluto and of Vulcan. That's my impression. And I hope it is so. And I believe it will be so. Okay, what else?
Okay, lots more. Olivia says, Michael, isn't it hard to believe how in the US, the big lie of Trump has not subsided, but is instead taken over the Republican Party?
If one can even call it anymore, the Republican Party, it's more Trumpism. But you know, the man is a little bit less visible than he was before, and I guess you know, they call him the other guy, and we can be grateful for that the ceaseless barrage of lying propaganda has narrowed down considerably. It's no longer a roaring river sweeping everything out of the way. Watch your volume, everybody. It is instead coming down to a trickle. Make sure your microphones are turned off unless you are the one that is speaking. Yeah, so it is amazing, okay, that this agent of obstruction and division still commands so many, but it tells us where the mind, the glamour-ridden, illusion-ridden mind of millions are. And that's where our educational work comes in, and our subtle esoteric work. We can never give up, because we see that the better time is coming. We just have to live through what is essentially the outer turbulence. And, for myself as an astrologer, I'm looking at that Saturn, which has entered the sign Aquarius, which is opposite the sign in which the other guy has his ascendant and is moving closer and closer and closer. This may be the first ex-president ever to be indicted and imprisoned, certainly challenged by the law, and I believe the United States, and by extension other countries, but I believe the United States will prove that it is a nation under law, and that no individual, however woefully charismatic, will be above the law. So we're going to
Michael,
live through it.
Yeah, I think you're right. But we have been fighting this battle for our democracy for months. And then there was the election finally. And then after that, well, now the battle for our democracy is to ensure voting rights, because
Yeah,
so many
exactly.
of the state legislatures are ruled, and state governments are ruled by Republicans, and there and in so many states, in almost the majority of states now, there are Republican legislatures who are trying, and Iowa has already done this, legislated voting rights that limit drastically voters.
Yeah.
And even that Arizona case before the Supreme Court, the Arizona advocate for limiting voting rights said, just blatantly,
He said it out loud. Yeah.
well, the reason we want to do it is because the other side had too many votes. So our battle continues, and I don't know. I in the end, the good will prevail. But my gosh, I thought we've had a little bit of a breather here, and we don't. And so
No.
This is critical to get these legislatures and voting rights limitations stopped before as we move into our
election.
next.
Absolutely. Well, these are the shenanigans, and these are the manipulations, the demagoguery, and all the rest of it. And of course, obviously, the I want to call it the party of the soul is not sitting on their hands with respect to this problem. So we'll have to see what that may mean in terms of federal laws that are attempting to come forth. And these are the technicalities, but whether something can be done in terms of reconciliation regarding these state abuses, and then there's going to be a big battle between individualism and the group, or between states' rights and the federal overview, which has to consider everybody. So, okay, we took a quick breath, and now we're in it again.
Because glamour and illusion are still thriving.
It is.
We must work on that. Oh,
yeah, we're going to push it. We're going to push it, obviously. Yeah. Thank you, Lily.
Thank you.
Yeah. What else now, BL?
Okay, we got lots here. Let me get back up to, Jan says, how does Neptune work with Pluto?
How does it work with Pluto? Well, it's Neptune and Vulcan, but it works with Pluto in this way, that Pluto can destroy the illusion of lower Neptune with its production of wishful thinking. Now, it worked out in horrible ways, in the ways when back in World War II, where people were bringing about some kind of universal death. You had the gas chambers, you had all kinds of extermination. Pluto, Neptune can bring that. And a lot of those people who were into the final solution for so many types of people that they didn't even think of as human, had that Pluto-Neptune conjunction. But looked at from a higher perspective, Pluto can destroy the illusions to which Neptune is prone and say, look, let's do a little glamour busting here. Pluto is the buster and Neptune is the glamour, and will clear the way of this wishful thinking and do something that is actually going to work in terms of the plan. But usually you're thinking of Pluto and Vulcan in terms of the coming of the Christ, but a lot of glamour clearing is good with Pluto and Neptune. Okay, what else?
Heike responds to Jessica, and she says, Jessica, the outer is always part of the illusion. Maya and truth can be found inside only and not be expected in the outer world, which is relative.
Yeah, I guess it's a principle. Locate, how does it say? Learn the meaning of illusion, and in its midst, locate the golden thread of truth. I believe that is one of the that is one of the statements around page 473 in a treatise on cosmic fire. And I know a treatise on white magic. I just want to check that. Learn the meaning of illusion, and in its midst, locate the golden thread of truth. So if I turn very quickly to 473, oh, there it is. I'll show it to you. And here it is. View the world of thought and separate the false out of the true. Okay. Then, number 2, learn the meaning of illusion, and in its midst, locate the golden thread of truth. These are so good, by the way. If we could, DK has said, if we live up to these 15 pieces of advice, we're going to be a master. We're going to be an adept. So, I memorized them once. I guess they've passed out of my mind right now, but it could dust them off a little bit. And I would say this is another one of those lists that is worth memorizing, because the counsel, the advice is so very good. So yeah, look, rush not from point to point, nor be deluded by the things which pass away. I'll show you something from the third ray, which you may find interesting. Rush not from, and here it is. Oh, golly, esoteric psychology. Let's see if I, okay, now that's not the one I want. It is point to point, nor be deluded. That's it. Oh, I got it. It's just that it's so dark that you can't see it, because I like color, and I unfortunately thought blue is the answer to everything. Okay, so here, let me show this to you. Rush, the word goes forth. And now remember, this is going forth to third ray souls, the very kind we've been talking about, who are the victims or perpetrate corporate greed on the populace. The word goes forth from soul to form. Be still. Learn to stand silent, quiet, and unafraid. I, at the center, am. Look up along the line, i.e. the Antakarana, look up along the line and not along the many lines, which in the space of eons you have woven. These hold thee prisoner. Be still Rush, now this is what I wanted to emphasize. Rush not from point to point, nor be deluded by the outer forms and that which disappears. Behind the forms the weaver stands, and silently he weaves. So I would say to Jesse that this is the kind of thing, as the soul becomes stronger, that we can expect even in the corporate world. There is no law that corporate greed and delusion about what is of value has to abide, has to last. There's no law that says it must or will. In fact, the pressure of the returning hierarchy will make it less and less likely that it will abide. So that's a very good, that's a very good piece of advice, and it's on page 360 of Esoteric Psychology, Volume 2. Okay, let's go on. BL.
Okay. Shriyanta says, I think we also need to focus on the many spiritual groups arising publicly around the world, masses of people uniting, especially online, to meditate, to visualize for peace. We don't hear about this in the daily news, but it is ongoing and the intention is good.
Yeah, and that's called the New Group of World Servers, which in a way, there are so many groups that are filled with men and women of goodwill, and some of them are actually, high enough in intensity of service to be part of the new group of world servers, and we do take them very much into mind, and that's why we're doing our programs on group work and the laws of the soul. So I certainly agree with you. There was a video, and Sheldon and Helena Hughes, they showed that video, and at the end, it had a list of all these constructive groups, and the thing went on and on and on and on, even rapidly. There were just like thousands. And, it tells us that quietly and behind the scenes, and in the interests of the common individual, the good is rising. There's a lot of decaying going on, but underneath it all, the new shoots of the new plant are breaking forth. And we have to, even as we work like mad, we have to sustain our optimism that these better days are coming, no matter what we have to live through. And, DK says it won't be easy. You know what happened to John the Baptist? He was the individual. He ended up meeting King Herod and Salome, and he didn't get any farther in that incarnation. So when we're members of the new group of world servers, the so-called group John the Baptist, we cannot think it will be easy. We will be resisted, but this is the time, if we can, to prove our mettle, if we can. Okay, BL, go on, please.
Okay, let me make sure I'm okay. From Anne, she says, to Olivia's point, I wonder if at some time we might need to do protective meditations around voting rights protections. She says it's an idea.
Yeah, and it's a good one, and that's is what Olivia was basically hinting at, and Tuya and I certainly agree with that factor, because basically it's just another selfish grab for ignominious purposes and simply to preserve the false values. We know that. And like I say, we can also maybe count on the party closer to the soul. It has its imperfections, but closer to the soul, not to sit on their hands with respect to these moves. And already I've seen that occurring. But look, we can again reawaken our vigil process. You know, it's just a question of how much we can do, but we can do something to try to clear the way, either for the powers that be to negate those selfish moves, or somehow to have them not arrive at the ignominious end which they propose. Basically, keep the black people, keep the brown people, keep the people, the different people, whatever, away from voting, so that, you know, make America white again, kind of thing. As I've been saying, look, you got to look at people from the angle of the etheric body and the causal body. The outer form is not going to tell you too much. The inner radiance will tell you who the individual is, and these people are deluded, the ones that are, you know, depriving others of their vote, disenfranchising, and they are incapable of seeing beyond the immediate outer form. It's just materialism is superficiality of vision. It's a delusion based on superficiality of vision. And somehow we have to get that point across and practice our esoteric means so that this idea can really begin to be powerful. It already is powerful among many, and we just want to strengthen it. Okay, BL.
Okay, Jessica says thank you to Heike and to you, that she feels refreshed by your comments, and also thank you to Sri Yantra. All right, and then Michael Crow says, I understand this today, and I'm also very perplexed because the energies underneath appear to be radicalizing both polarities.
Yep.
My sense is that this is where we become and aspire to become intuitive, especially because we have entered an age where the corruption is so embedded on all sides. I think we also need to be self-reflective in all our groups, because we have really become so separate and are not understanding each other. Instead, many are just blaming and attacking each other, which really can only create more division and defensive, offensive personality conflicts. I think we need to really start clarifying what is beneath these problems today, and not just singling out individual people or groups of individuals. This is a reflection of where humanity has failed to gain its proper soul contact. And as far as I have experienced, there are far more good people than negative people, but the current system perpetuates an apocalyptic view on everything, which is, to my mind, is the bigger glamour we are in. If more people took the time to understand one another and ask why people are where they are, we would realize there is only a minority of people consciously in darkness. Divide and conquer is a very common practice throughout history that keeps people apart.
Yeah, it's quite a statement that you've made here, Michael. And again, my impression is that these things are true, and especially in the foreground. But let us remember that this is not only up to humanity itself, that the hierarchy, the masters in the 5 planetary centers, will, it is predicted, be invoked and evoked because of the wisdom that they will have shown in solving world problems. So we have the necessity to, you know, to deal with loving understanding, and not to be captured by the foreground considerations, but at the same time, we are students of esotericism, and we realize there is a spiritual hierarchy, there is a Christ, there are Chohans, who are masters of the 7 ashrams, and the occult perspective is very important here when it comes to the kinds of powers that are being liberated and are literally going to dissipate, disperse, dispel the very things that you are talking about. It will take both. It will take the very focused, sacrificial action of the servers, and we all know the old thing, be the change you would see happen. So it's up to every one of us in our particular interactions to be that change which we would see happen, and at the same time invoke the Lords of Liberation, invoke through the Triangles Network the Buddhas of activity. We're not trying to solve this only as human beings. We are trying to solve this as souls in incarnation who have access to occult, spiritually occult sources. So, it's possible to descend into a gloom about some of the terrible things that are happening right now, and they are abusive, and they are deluded, and they are obstructive, and all that is true. And if you are a spiritual occultist, you will know that they are impermanent and will be crushed out, dispersed, dissipated, dispelled. They will be. And we have to work in that particular faith. And DK tells us we have to have that faith to work. We have to have that positive expectation, that positive belief, no matter what we are temporarily, and it is temporary, confronting. That's my impression. Both sides are needed, the higher and the lower of the pairs of opposites, and we cannot forget the occult solution to these problems, as well as that which humanity can produce from within itself. So, bad in the beginning, but getting better all the time, even though the foreground in all of its destructiveness seems like, boy, this is the end of the trail here. No, it's not. And DK looks ahead even a few years to when Russia and United States will be cooperating on legislation for the protection of children. And the 3 great synthetic nations, United States, Great Britain, and Russia, will be cooperative for the welfare of humanity. And this is where the people's will crush out the selfishness. Now, if we don't have that faith, I think I have that faith. I think so, I have to examine myself. But if we don't have that faith, we're going to be taken in by the foreground, and let that not happen. Let us stand in spiritual being, do whatever we can to be the change we would see happen, and persist with our occult healing methods that we do now possess. It's a big issue you brought up, but okay, that's anyway my response to it. Maybe other people have other things to say. Okay, please go on, BL.
Okay, there were a number of people who said thank you to Michael, and that it was a courageous statement. Well said. Okay, and then Heike says, to Anne, protective meditation for the voting rights all over the world, not just
Right,
the US.
Right. Because absolutely, this is when the other guy was in, the dictatorships were strengthened. Now we have a different approach, and excuse me for thinking that one party is closer to the indigo and one party closer to the Martian red, all over the world, the angel and the dweller. Excuse me for thinking that, but it's not a question of the simple equality of both approaches. No, one is closer to the indigo soul of humanity. So we take into consideration the entirety of humanity, and what begins anywhere in a significant way will spread all across humanity. Right now, there is a crisis area. DK tells us that the battle for democracy is being fought out in the United States. He says so, okay. But that doesn't mean it's not also being fought out, maybe with lesser degrees of immediate intensity in many other countries. And we have to prevail here to what they say, to light the way. That's the destiny of the United States. That's the motto, and we have to live according to that. This is not meant to be nationalistic. This is just following what DK said about the battle and about lighting the way. Okay, BL.
Yes, Sri Yanta says, are all the superficial conflicts a result of the fire by friction component of these three fires and are equally of value? I thought this was what DK said in Cosmic Fire somewhere.
They're all of equal value, but fire by friction is the dominating force among millions. Fire by friction is the fire of form, and it is the form that is opposing solar fire or the angel of the presence. Electric fire is maybe the most powerful, but not yet. That will be in the next solar system. Right now, we have to make solar fire the most powerful, when fire by friction is dangerously powerful, opposing the angel of the presence and its solar fire. So we cannot look at them all as just kind of equal in time and space. They are all equal in the realm of necessity, but in terms of how it's working out right now in time and space, there is a great battle between solar fire, which needs strengthening, and fire by friction, which needs wise reduction. Okay, anything else?
That's all I see here, but I wanted to make a comment. Yesterday in, I believe it was your Shambhala group study, there was a important passage that you read from Destiny of Nations, and it was about Ataturk and the fact that he may have had a number of things wrong with his personality, but overall the work that he did to fulfill the Shambhala purpose or plan was overriding of the personality issues. I'm saying it wrong, but that just stuck out in my mind from yesterday, and it seems so apropos for the discussion that we've got here today.
Yeah, thanks, BL. By the way, Michael, can you make, if she's not already, can you make Tuya a co-host? So would appreciate that if she's not already. Okay, look, Ataturk had the problem of alcohol and women, as it would be looked at in those days. These were his personal issues, and DK called them relatively negligible compared to what he was doing for the disinterested, unselfish, nation-embracing use of the Shambhala force or the Shambhala energy, whichever way we want to look at it. So you know how it is with early discipleship or probationary discipleship. If a person starts deviating in the earlier phases of personal misbehavior, then you tend to throw out the discipleship of that person and say, well, that person is doing no good because look how they're behaving. And, obviously you have to care about how you behave. I'm sure all of us wish we had behaved better in a personal way uh, under certain circumstances. But at the same time, what really is going on behind the scenes and what really is the effect of the individual. Now, Franklin Roosevelt had some of the same issues. Churchill had his bottle of bourbon before noon. Uh, they say every day, couldn't be an exaggeration. They had their personal liabilities, but at the same time, they kind of, saved the world under their leadership at the time. So what are the big things? What are the little things when we're going through a particular phase of discipleship? We tend to think that everybody has to reflect the things that we are wrestling with, and that is not necessarily the case. Some disciples are just beyond that, and if they have a slip here or there, as long as they keep steady, like Ataturk did, then they have a much better effect on the welfare of humanity than the people criticizing them, often for petty reasons, can guess that they have. So it's just a question of smaller values, which are, still important, and the larger inclusive values that embrace all of humanity. Okay. Okay.
And then Leslie says, could you please comment on this in light of Ataturk and the massacre of Armenians?
Okay, now, I really need the history on that. That was a terrible thing. And I don't, obviously there's a huge karma there in Armenia. We were looking, Tuya just did an excellent presentation on Armenia the last time we had the Soul of Nations. It was a huge nation, and it seemed to connect with Turkey. It seemed to actually take that over. Torkham said that Ataturk spared his father because he was a pharmacist medical expert, but that Torkham witnessed the killing of approximately 93 of his own relatives, but he and his parents were spared. Well, this is something I wish I was qualified to comment on about Ataturk's involvement with the Armenian massacre and to what extent it did occur. I know that it was much involved with the fact that Turkey was Islamic and Armenia was Christian. And Ataturk, interestingly, attacked so much of the theology, the outer theology of Islam. So I would have to investigate, whether he sent forces into Armenia particularly, or whether it was because of some other dynamic. I just can't say. Nevertheless, we have the Tibetan statement about what he did. And, he is said to have banned the fez, which was kind of an outer symbol of a certain type of Islamic approach, which he considered to be obstructive. So the degree to which he may have persecuted Christians, you now inspire me to look into that. And I'm not qualified yet to say much about it. Although in some ways I tend not to think that, I tend to think that there was more going on there than just a man wanting to attack Armenia. I tend to think that. Okay, I will look it up. and study that. Because the Armenian massacre, now, right now, look, we have a totally Islamic government in Turkey. It basically is a reaction against Ataturkism, and they are very hostile towards Armenia at the present time. It really is the old Islamic and Christian battle going on even now. And I want to understand how that may have happened during the First World War. Okay. Is there anything else?
Yes, Olivia asked, is it time to meditate yet? Because we've been at this for 2 hours now.
Oh, no, we're going 3 hours tonight, Olivia. Didn't you know? Well, suddenly all of the numbers go down, 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 down. And maybe a few people are left. Okay. Yeah, well, we are getting to that point. So there are no more statements here, I think.
No, I'm pretty sure we got them all.
Very good. Okay. And now we go forward. And maybe just to keep my voice from droning on, Tuya, do you want to handle this meditation? I'm not sure about your internet setup there. So if you do, fine. And if not, I will go forward.
Yes, please do that.
Yeah, I'll go forward with it. Yeah, you bet. Okay. Okay. And here we're going to use, I know it's long, but basically it's all about emotional reaction without thinking. Okay? Real thought. That's what it's about. I called it blind, violent, emotional reaction to fantastical, conspiratorial, kama-manasic thinking. And even the leaders in Congress and the Senate in the United States are not immune from this. They appear to have greater mental control, but basically they are following their own survival, their own fear, their own greed, so many. And they're just not capable of thinking of the welfare of the greater whole. So let's just think of each other. We're not going to name everybody here, but coming together as a group in a uniting state of consciousness. And we use a protective formula because we need to be protected. We're entering into that world where the lodge of opposition, the lodge of darkness, is focusing a lot of energy, and they don't like the intrusion of those who want to bring more light into the situation. So we use the forehead, the heart, the left eye, the right eye, tracing light as we go, and we say, as a soul, I work in light. And darkness cannot touch me. I take my stand within the light. I work, and from that point, I never move, tracing light with the cross of, he calls it the cross of divinity. Before each one of us, that cross of divinity, and before the entire group, that larger protective cross of divinity. Then we focus the vital light of matter and the light of the lower mind. We focus it on the plane of mind, those two lights, using our imagination to do so. This is logic and reason vitalized from below, supported from below. Two lights as one, and then there is our attempt to contact soul light above. Let's do that. We recognize this soul light and we imagine it descending into the area of the two other lights. And now soul, mind, and the vitality of etheric physical matter, three lights as one light, which will be the basis of the going forth of our beam of dissipation. It's the mind held steady in the light and the support of the vitality of matter, getting ready to project that beam out into the astral world. And so we say, the light is one, and in that light we shall see light. This is the light that turns the darkness into day. Oh. 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 And we're going to let our beam go forth, putting us on rapport with the astral world, into which illusion also has settled, but having the power to dissipate the clouds, vapors, miasmas, mantles of oppression which we find. And we say together the formula. Radiance are we, and power. We stand forever with our hands stretched out, linking the heavens and the earth, the inner world of meaning and the subtle world of glamour. We reach into the light and bring it down to meet the need. We reach into the silent place and bring from thence the gift of understanding. Thus, with the light we work and turn the darkness into day. And as these words are said, that beam is visualized, and we want to make sure we're in rapport with the astral plane. Where people are so moved by emotion and by the illusions which feed the emotion. And yet we have the means through the beam and the protection through the cross to do something to bring light into that world. And so we strengthen our beam through the invocation of the spiritual will, as if through the monad and triad and jewel and sacrifice petals and all the way into the personality. And we say, with power upon its beam, the light is focused on the go. Now the glamour is basically unthinking emotional reaction. But in the longer version, blind, violent, emotional reaction to conspiratorial, fantastical, kama-manasic so-called thinking. It's riddled with selfishness. It's blind, it's violent, and it's based on illusions that have descended into the emotional world. And we see what it has caused and what it can cause. Basically, a worldwide civil war between those who support the dweller and those who support the angel of the presence. And so we use these words of power, first to review them and then to go into the silence for 5 minutes as we visualize the light penetrating and weakening the glamours, this particular glamour, and seeing however we wish to see the dissipation of this glamour which has seized upon so many. So the first word of power, the power of our united light, prevents the appearance of the glamour of blind, violent, emotional reaction to conspiratorial, fantastical, kama-manasic, so-called thinking. The illusion strengthens the glamour. The power of our united light negates the quality of this glamour from affecting humanity. The power of our united light destroys the life behind this glamour. No way to sustain anymore through vitality this unthinking, emotional miasma. Now we will take our 5 minutes of silence and intensity of purpose, and we will be seeing the work proceed in our own way, but cognizant of working with the group. Oh. And we expect and we believe that the astral plane, as fed by illusion, is just a little bit clearer as a result of our work. So we withdraw our beam back to the triple point upon the plane of mind, and we redistribute the three lights. The searchlight of the soul is shut off. We sound the Om 3 times aloud to indicate the completion of this little unit of work which has affected the astral plane principally, but also the concrete mind and the etheric physical nature. Oh. 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 So friends, little by little, and with persistence, working without let up or leeway, as the second ray wheel works, we do our part in esoterically helping to banish these glamours. And we will now consider, this emergency about state suppression of voting rights, hopefully strengthening the powers that be so they can do something about it in a more outward way. Tomorrow morning, a Zoom broadcast or webinar on the new moon, which always involves the planting of a seed. So be thinking about the seed you planted at the last new moon. If you can remember it, it's good to write it down and remember it, and whether it came to any fruition or not in this lunation cycle. And think about whether you want to repeat the planting of that seed or some other seed, which will take a month from new moon to new moon to come to fruition and make a difference. I think that starts at 9:30 GMT tomorrow, and you should have on your revised, what is it? Your revised schedule. You should have that and the link that you will need. So all of us on the communications group, Tuija and I here in Finland, and the representatives of Mori Federation and USRSRI, we wish you a good day or night, whatever it is, and with love and with many blessings. We think outwardly, DK says, what what do you do? What do you do? And he says, think outwardly towards each other in love. That's what you do. And that's what we will do. So a little bit longer tonight. There were a lot of comments and questions and a number of things to prepare for. So we'll be seeing at least some of you. I know it's going to be the wee hours of the night. For some, it's the new moon, but you can always catch it later if you have to on Makara or on YouTube. And Makara, as far as Makara goes, it will go up quite quickly. Maybe YouTube a little bit later. So thanks to BL and Michael Crow for helping executively run things, and let's move ahead. And bye for now.